What should we make now of what we've seen so far and what we're going to see in this impeachment trial? I'm trying to only take the important takeaways and give them to you folks. So let's bring in our friend Ned Ryun. He's the founder of American Majority. Tell us what he's seeing. Ned, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm good, Buck. Good to be with you. And, it's interesting times we live in. But I was thinking yesterday as I watched Ted Lieu and Eric Swalwell, I guess if you're going to have a proper circus, you got to have a parade of clowns. And so one after one of those clowns came up and, it's the big lie. I mean, this is the thing, Buck, that I think people, I hope, understand that all of this, neither impeachment was based in fact, right? There are no facts involved with the first one, and there's no facts really involved with this one. And it's based on a big lie. And you know that Democrats know it, too, because they edited out three very key words in their video: peaceful and patriotic, when they were trying to show in this video that somehow Trump incited violence and sedition and insurrection. But of course, they edited out three very key words in that. It's all a big lie, based off them trying to pin down President Trump on somehow inciting all of this, when in fact it wasn't insurrection. At worst, it was a riot of some really stupid people. And again, we're finding out facts too, Buck. This was premeditated. There now is evidence that there were plans being made months ahead of time to do this at the Capitol. And in fact, we now know that those pipe bombs were actually planted at the DNC and the RNC the night before. So all of this is a big lie. And my supposition in all of this, Buck, is it's a big lie to cover the big rig, right? If you're distracted by this, you're not focused on that Time magazine article talking about the big rig of what they actually did in 2020. So this is all kind of, I think, part of their plan to distract people, because they're never going to convict them. You need 11 more Republicans.
Go ahead.
To convict him, and they already said it was unconstitutional to continue on with this trial.
Tell us about the Time Magazine 2020 article that was celebrating. I mean, you're somebody who understands the inner workings of elections and what actually goes on here, from messaging to ballot boxes. I mean, you're somebody who knows that top to bottom. What were they celebrating about how they stacked the deck in 2020 in favor of the Democrat?
Yeah, no, I would encourage people, if you have not read Molly Ball's article at Time Magazine about the secret campaign to save the 2020 elections, which, of course, they demolished electoral integrity to fortify the election. I thought that was one of the most curious Orwellian words I've seen in recent times. They weren't rigging the election, Buck. They were fortifying it. But it really was the big rig. It was collusion between big tech, big labor unions, Chamber of Commerce, they've always been problematic. They've always been more corporatist than capitalist. And obviously the big tech not only playing a role in basically stopping the free flow of information, right? Censoring the New York Post, Google not really letting some of this information that would be damaging to Joe Biden come out. And on top of that, I've talked about this some, but people need to be aware of what Mark Zuckerberg did with the Center for Tech and Civic Life, in which he dropped $350 million into a nonprofit that then was used to pay private funds used to pay election officials in these battleground states, specifically in blue counties and blue cities, to boost the blue vote, Democratic vote. I mean, literally by a margin of 10-1, Buck. We know in Wisconsin, thanks to the Amistad Project, that in Wisconsin alone, the Center for Tech and Civic Life money was basically $47 per vote inside of blue counties and blue cities versus more to $4 to $7 in Republican counties. So what they were doing in this Time article, and I have to tell you, when I first read it last week, Buck, I was torn between feelings of being completely infuriated because they completely destroyed, I believe, in my mind, and are now proud of it, Americans' ability to truly self-govern, right? They're kind of done with democracy, right? We're not going to let this happen in such a way. We're going to manipulate it and rig it to get the election results we want, to make sure that the great outsider doesn't win again. And so you start to really understand, and they're proud of it. And so you're infuriated at the same time. But the thing that concerns me, they only brag about these things if they think they've won, right? People that are this brazen think they've somehow pulled it off, or the American people are too stupid to understand what they actually did, or just simply not going to pay attention. So I would encourage everybody, go read that Time article. And I hope you have the same feeling I did, completely infuriated by what they did in manipulating our 2020 elections.
We're speaking to Ned Ryun, founder of American Majority. Ned, I also have to say that it seems as this impeachment farce continues on with this trial this week, there are very important things that are not known publicly, and I do not believe are known by members of the Senate who are supposed to be adjudicating this whole thing. And the first one that comes to mind is, how is it that we were told, and I am somebody who fell into this category, we were told something as straightforward as a police officer was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. That was the report, right?
Right.
Given the violence, there was violence involving cops. They did hit them, and there were scuffles, and there was assaults on officers. But we were told that somebody was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher, or at least was hit with a fire extinguisher and died as a result of the injury. And now it's quite clear that that is not what happened. How can we have? I mean, that has been the singular. That was the murder that was supposed to be the basis of the violent insurrection narrative, because other than that, you have what's clearly a riot. You have people running around, taking photos, being idiots, breaking the law, should be punished, no question. But it seems pretty important that we get the Officer Sicknick's story correct.
That's right.
But yet we don't have it. We don't know.
No, and I think I would encourage people to read two articles that have been done on this very specific topic. One is Julie Kelly's at American Greatness. I believe it either ran yesterday or the day before, but Julie Kelly at American Greatness. And at Revolver News, Darren Beatty, I'm not sure if Darren was the actual author of it, but there's another good piece on this at Revolver News about the exact same issue in which this was pushed. This was, this officer Sicknick was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. This is murder, etc. And now they're realizing, those aren't really the facts. There's a lot of questions about that. There are a lot of questions about, obviously, the premeditation, the FBI's knowledge of this. Apparently, they knew it beforehand. Mark Meadows came out the other day and said Trump realized that with that many people in D.C. and a lot of people coming in, that we should have more National Guard. He had made a request to have more National Guard in the city before January 6th. Mayor Bowser said no. I mean, there's a lot of different details that need to be addressed and understood. But again, I go back to my earlier point. Neither of these impeachments or the trials had anything to do with facts. And the ultimate purpose, and I wrote about this at American Greatness yesterday, is to basically say that any dissent to our narrative, any dissent to our status quo, to our system, will not be tolerated. We will punish you financially, your reputation. We will shut you down. Now dissent is not patriotic. In fact, it's seditious and you're insurrectionist. And in fact, you're even a domestic terrorist. Dissent will not be allowed. And how dare you question us? The other thing too, Buck, really quick, that's kind of fascinating to me. People that really think they have won, that really feel confident about this, don't do this, right? There's almost an element of fear in some of the things that they're doing, trying to get Trump disqualified from running again, trying to shut down 74 plus million people and saying, you made a bad choice. We're going to take away your right to choose any candidate moving forward. And if you choose the wrong one, there'll be consequences for you. But there's almost this element of fear of what they're doing, because I don't know how confident they really actually feel, because they really had to do a lot of things to kind of rig to get the results they wanted to. And it doesn't feel like they're terribly confident in their position right now. I mean, that's at least one of my thoughts.
Ned, I also think that everyone should be aware, in my estimation, what's going on here is that they're setting a narrative of events with this Senate trial that is actually in many ways more to create the basis for steps that have nothing to do with this, right? To create the basis for enhanced counterterrorism-based surveillance of Trump supporters, to create a narrative of kicking people off of social media who are Trump supporters because of violence policies, and that essentially this what the Democrat Senate is doing right now, or Democrats on the Senate are doing right now, is creating the excuse for the abuse of Trump supporters that's going to occur in the rest of society, and they're going to
100%.
point to this trial and say, see, those were the facts presented.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think we're in a very dangerous period in American politics in which they are trying to, for all intents and purposes, dehumanize a very significant percentage of the population, right? If you can say these people were insurrectionists, they're domestic terrorists, they're un-American, if you can say that and actually convince enough of the American people, well, maybe they're right. Maybe these people are very dangerous. well, then it lays the groundwork for you to be able to justify what you're going to do next, and be able to punish them, whether it's censor them, whether, it's concerning. You don't even really want to think about where they're headed, but I know this is the first step in a very dangerous path. If you want to be able to do certain things to people, you have to first dehumanize them. And then once you dehumanize them in a certain segment of the population's eyes, you can do whatever you want to them moving forward. Deeply troubling, deeply concerning.
Ned Ryun is the founder of American Majority. And Ned, to that end, you're a guy who is in the political trenches, and you're trying to actually organize and mobilize people for constitutionalism, conservatism.
That's right.
What do we do now? I keep getting this question, and it's one that I think there's no single answer. It's really an evolving answer as more situations arise here. But what do we say to people right now who are feeling exactly what I think you and I are, which is that this is a precarious moment in American politics? How do we go forward?
Well, first of all, I think people need to fully understand what they did last year. And one of our big projects with American Majority this year is Electoral Integrity Project, in which we're going to be spelling out, here's what they did in 2020, using the Time article, using the Honest Ed Project's report, using some of our other research that we pulled together to really explain to people, here's what happened in 2020. We can never let it happen again, right? With universal mail-in ballots, twice as many absentee ballots cast this time around than there were in 2016. A lot of questions about the validity of a lot of those votes. So explain to people what took place and then reform items. And I'm telling people what you need to be focused on over the next 18 months, because I really do feel this, Buck, that we've got one shot at the Death Star. When you see some of the things that Nancy Pelosi and these people are doing to kind of entrench some of the stuff they got away with last year and turn it into law, I think we've got one shot at it between now and 2022. We've got to do electoral reform. And there's a whole list of electoral reforms that we're going to be going through, whether it's dealing with absentee ballot laws, state legislators actually knowing their rights. You can't skirt state constitutions. We're going to try and clean voter rolls. Dirty data leads to dirty elections. And then encourage people as they find out the right bills that are being pushed in these state legislatures to actually call and lobby their elected officials on that to make sure reform happens. And at the same time, to take it another step, Buck. I think some people that are listening and people that we're going to be training moving forward this year, I'm going to challenge you. You got to run for county clerk. You got to run for county registrar. You got to run for these municipal level positions that have oversight into elections. Some of them might even actually end up running for Secretary of State or other positions that have to do with the electoral process, because we cannot allow what happened in 2020 to take place again, because it really was hollowed out the American right to self-governance. It was manipulated. Laws were broken and skirted. State constitutions were skirted. And we've got to be aware of what took place and then follow those action items and get it done before 2022. And I have to tell you, Buck, there are 27 Republican governors out there. There are 23 trifectas in which we have in the state, the governor, the state Senate, and the state House. If we do not have meaningful legislation in at least those 23 states, I'm going to question Republicans' intelligence on this issue, because they have to address this. And if they don't, Republicans, I don't think they might never win a national election again. And if it gets really bad, they'll never win an election at any level inside of a battleground state.
Ned, one last quick one for you. What do you think the former president's thoughts are on running again, Donald Trump?
I think the real test is 2022. If he wants to be the kingmaker and really show some political clout in 2022 and pick a series of House races and Senate races and do rallies and raise money and have a huge impact, right? A huge winning percentage in 2022. I think it sets the stage for running again in 2024. But for me, the 2022 elections and his role and his impact on those elections really are indicative of what he'll do in 2024.
Ned Ryun of American Majority, everybody. Ned, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Buck.
Hey, Team Buck, thank you so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, please click that little thumbs up button so then it will log as liked. And also, if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.